Published 0835 Est, the 13th of November 2017. Updated 1124 Est, the 13th of November 2017. Carl Sargeant hanged himself in his utility room at home while his wife was upstairs and left a note on the door telling her not to enter. An inquest heard today. The Welsh Assembly member killed himself 4 days after he was sacked by Carwyn Jones over disputed allegations of groping and touching women. Mr. Sargeant, 49, hanged himself in a lean-to off the utility room of his ex-council house home in Connah's Quay, Deeside, after his wife Bernie, 48, found a handwritten note on the door. It urged her not to come in and just call the police, but she ignored the request, entered and found him fatally injured on the floor. Mr. John Gittins, Senior Coroner for North Wales, opened and then adjourned the inquest in Ruthin, Denbighshire today and described his death as an apparent act of self-harm. The 10-minute hearing, which was not attended by Mr. Sargeant's wife or their 2 adult children Jack and Lucy, was told that the family and paramedics had desperately tried to revive Mr. Sargeant for between 20 and 30 minutes. Carl Sargeant's wife Bernie, 48, pictured together, found her husband dead at their home in Connah's Quay last Tuesday. An inquest heard today. Carwyn Jones called in police after his house in South Wales, pictured last Tuesday, was sprayed with graffiti hours after he refused to resign over Carl Sargeant's death. A provisional cause of death was given as hanging. Mr. Gittins said his inquest will not consider the truth of allegations made against Mr. Sargeant or making adjudications on who is right or wrong. Mr. Sargeant, 49, was found in a lean-to off the utility room of his ex-council house home in Connah's Quay, Deeside, after his wife had found a note on the door of the utility room. Why was Carl Sargeant not told the details of the claims against him? Why were the family's concerns about the impact of the investigation on his mental health not responded to properly? Why was he suspended before the allegations against him were investigated and proved? Was there a toxic atmosphere in the Welsh Assembly government? Was there a concerted campaign to undermine Mr. Sargeant in the administration? Did he receive a complaint in 2014 about a campaign to undermine Mr. Sargeant, and if he did, what was done? Mr. Gittins, Senior Coroner for North Wales, said he would hold a fair investigation into the death and would examine what steps the Welsh Assembly took to look after Mr. Sargeant's mental welfare after the allegations had been made against him. He said he would be seeking statements from First Minister Mr. Jones and possibly others at the Welsh Assembly in the coming weeks. But he said the inquest would not consider the veracity of the allegations made against Mr. Sargeant. He said, nor will I be looking at Cardiff and the Welsh Assembly, a Labour Party, and making adjudications as to who is right and wrong and who can be trusted. It may well be that the events of the days preceding his death may be relevant to my inquiry. It is simply too early to say at this stage. I am nonetheless grateful to note from the family's solicitors and also from the First Minister that they are all willing to assist me in my investigation. I shall be seeking statements from them and possibly from others at the Welsh Assembly in the coming weeks. Mr. Gittins said he would be looking at steps taken by the Assembly regarding Mr. Sargeant's mental welfare after the allegations were made against him. He said, my responsibilities as a coroner require me to give consideration to the prevention of future deaths. With this aspect of my role in mind, I shall be examining carefully the steps taken by the Assembly to have regard to Mr. Sargeant's mental welfare prior to his death. The coroner said that a post-mortem was carried out by Dr. Andrew Dalton at Glan Clwyd Hospital on November the 10th, who would conduct toxicology tests but gave a provisional cause of death as hanging. Mr. Gittins said he was required by law to open an inquest into Mr. Sargeant's death and to reach a conclusion about when, where and how he had died. He said, let me make it absolutely clear therefore that my inquest will not consider the veracity of the allegations made against Mr. Sargeant, nor will I be looking to Cardiff and the Welsh Assembly or the Labour Party and making adjudications as to who is right or wrong and who can be trusted. But as part of my investigation I must gather evidence to assist me in reaching a conclusion, as I will be required to give consideration to reaching a conclusion of suicide. This will require me to be certain that it was Mr. Sargeant's intention to end his life at this time, and I must therefore have regard to his mental state and his ability to form such an intention. As a consequence, it may well be that the events of the days preceding his death may be relevant to my inquiry. It is too soon to say at this stage. The Welsh First Minister Carl Jones has defied calls to quit over Carl Sargeant's death, and today a former aide heaped more pressure on after describing the atmosphere in his office as pure poison. The coroner said he was grateful to Mr Sargeant's family and to the First Minister of Wales Carl Jones for saying they were willing to help with his investigation. He said he would be seeking statements from them and possibly other members of the Welsh Assembly in the coming weeks. Mr Gittins said that he also had to consider whether he would need to give a prevention of future deaths warning as part of his conclusions known as a Rule 28 report. He said, "If in the course of my investigations I have concerns that future deaths may occur and I am of the view that a person or organization may be in a position to alleviate such risks, then it is my duty to draw my concerns to the relevant body by way of a Rule 28 report for the prevention of future deaths. With this aspect of my role in mind, I shall be examining carefully the steps taken by the Assembly to have regard to Mr Sargeant's mental welfare prior to his death." Mr Gittins formally opened the inquest into Mr Sargeant's death but could not fix a date for the hearing before the independent inquiry already announced by Carl Jones. He concluded, "May I take this opportunity to express my sincere condolences to the family, friend and colleagues of Mr Sargeant and to assure them all that there will be a fair examination of the matters which are relevant to my investigations, and that I shall not allow the inquest to be trial by press, politics or personality." The family were represented at the hearing by solicitor Dafford Roberts, who said that the family would not be making any comments. It came as Welsh leader Carl Jones faced fresh pressure to step down today after a former aide said the atmosphere in his office was pure poison and his ex-boss was unwilling or unable to address its bullying culture. Carl Jones has refused to quit over his sacking of Minister Carl Sargeant, who took his own life at home in Connysky days after being accused of UAL misconduct. Former Welsh Government Minister Carl Sargeant, 48, pictured with his wife Bernie, 48, and children Jack, 23, and Lucy, 25, is believed to have taken his own life at home in Connysky, North Wales, having begged to know what he was accused of. Yesterday, the Welsh First Minister was accused of allowing a toxic environment to take hold in his office. Steve Jones, who served as a special advisor to Mr Jones from 2009 to 2014, said the mind games being employed against ministers, such as Carl, were at times an utter distraction from the serious business of governing Wales. Steve Jones, who served as a special advisor to Carl Jones from 2009 to 2014, has said it was a toxic environment. Went on, "Soon after I arrived to work for Carl after his election as First Minister in 2009, it was clear that I was entering a toxic environment. The atmosphere that existed on the 5th floor and in particular the First Minister's office was one of fear and loathing. I'm no shrinking violet when it comes to politics. Prior to moving to Cardiff Bay, I worked as a special advisor to the government chief whip at Westminster. I was accustomed to the rough and tumble of politics at the very highest level. But the behaviour of some at the top of the Welsh government was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It was pure poison." Mr Jones said that other aides working for Mr Jones used smear campaigns against ministers, such as Mr Sargeant. Ministers were undermined by senior advisers playing power games and seeking to exert unreasonable control over government and the First Minister himself, he wrote in a statement. Certain ministers who were seen as a threat to these advisers were frequently the subject of malicious rumours and concerted smear campaigns. Those ministers, including Carl, would have their diaries unreasonably monitored and questioned, their policy proposals shelved and direct access to the First Minister blocked. It went way beyond any office politics or personality clashes. He added the mind games being employed against ministers, such as Carl, were at times an utter distraction from the serious business of governing Wales. Last night Welsh Labour declined to comment, but a Welsh Government spokesman said, "We do not recognise these comments." All complaints regarding staff and special advisor conduct are taken seriously and dealt with accordingly. Carl Sargeant's family lawyer giving the statement outside his offices in Cardiff today. Carl Sargeant's grieving family had hit out at the Labour leader in Wales for stalling over an independent inquiry into his tragic suicide. In a statement today, his family said it is deeply concerning that the First Minister should suggest in his address to the media, yesterday, the 9th of November 2017, that all of the answers that the family seek and are entitled to know should be dealt with in a coroner's inquest. The First Minister is himself an experienced barrister and will know that the coroner's inquest can examine 4 questions only: the identity of the deceased, place of death, time of death, and how the death was caused. The family believe they have the painful answers to each of those questions. What a coroner's inquest cannot determine or appear to be determining is the civil or criminal liability, to apportion guilt or attribute blame, or to be seen to apportion guilt or to attribute blame. The First Minister will also know, as an experienced lawyer, that to announce and commence an independent review and inquiry does not hinder the coroner's inquest and would run alongside the coroner's inquest in any event. He will know all of the procedural issues that arise and that one does not prevent the other from taking place. An independent inquiry will ask all the questions that need to be asked and have not been answered, and will determine the reasons for the serious failings in following the correct procedures, practices and protocols, and the reasons for the complete abdication of responsibility and duty of care that was owed to Carl. We believe that an independent inquiry must be established immediately. Its terms of reference, the appointment of the chair and secretariat, must be undertaken by a body which is independent of the Welsh Government and in consultation with the family.